Howdy, friends and family. Thanks so much for joining me again. This is week 4, day 3 in the series I am doing with Christ Memorial Lutheran Church about knowing God. And this week we are talking about how God is sufficient. And in my last video, we took a look at how God said His grace is sufficient for any situation we might face and how we are to trust Him and find delight in those hardships and situations. And today I want to start off by talking about one of the names for God because I love going over those. And the name is El Shaddai. And you might have heard this name before, but I want to look at the different parts and try and understand what it means. So the El in El Shaddai refers to God's power and His might and how He is almighty. And you may recognize this from the other names we've looked at so far, which are Elohim and El Elyon. And so this part is used to refer to God's power and His might. And the second part, Shaddai, it has different meanings depending on who you ask, but sometimes it also means almighty, referring to His power and His might. But sometimes it means all sufficient, which is what we're talking about this week, how God is all sufficient. So when you call upon El Shaddai, you are calling upon the almighty, all sufficient God who is able to provide for any situation. And that's what sufficient means, enough for any situation. So I want to read from Philippians 4 verses 11 through 13. And it says, "I am not saying this because I am in need. For I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want, I can do everything through Him who gives me strength." Now, the typical meaning of this last verse that we usually get is that we can do absolutely anything. And while this can be true, God says that all things are possible with God. With man it is impossible, but with God it is possible. This is really Paul saying that no matter the situation, he has learned to be content because of the power and strength of God. This is a continuation of Paul saying he knows God as his El Shaddai, the all-sufficient one who he knows is enough for any situation that he could ever face. And he tells us why in Philippians 4:19, which says, "And my God will meet all your needs according to His glorious riches in Christ Jesus." Paul trusts God as his all-sufficient one, like we talked about last time. And because of that, he chooses to be content. He knows Him and he chooses to be content. And there's a difference between that knowledge and that choice. You can know something and not act on it. But here Paul is saying he knows God is all sufficient. He knows His grace is enough. And so he chooses to be content. And that is what I call you to do this week. I call you to be content. And this doesn't mean you never want anything. God does not say it's wrong to want things. In fact, He actually tells us that He wants us to pray to Him and He wants to hear our wants. But Paul is saying he knows God will provide for his needs. And so he can trust and be content. Even if he never gets any of those wants, he is content. And so that's what I call you to do this week. To be content knowing that your needs are provided for because God promises it. He promises to provide for your needs. And He says that He and His grace are enough. He is sufficient. He is your El Shaddai. So remember that this week. If you are memorizing 2 Corinthians 12:19, this is your reminder to keep working on it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you guys next time.